Into it. 3, 2, 1, go! Welcome for another episode of Awesome Stuff Badly with me, Dr. Ernie, and Miss Whitney, pairing in via Google Hangout. Say hi, Miss Whitney.
Hello.
We still haven't tested the output to see whether anyone can actually hear you. We'll have to do that at some point. So, two things I would like to try and deal with this hour. So we spent last time talking about how to get our SVG patch integrated into Reactive Coffee. And it was really painful because Reactive Coffee assumes jQuery objects, which are wrappers around HTML elements. And getting that to work with SVG elements was becoming a royal pain. And we got it sort of working, but there are all these special cases that did not work right. So the first thing I wanted to try was whether there is a way to wrap SVG elements as jQuery elements so that we can use the existing code paths for managing it. So that's the first goal. I figure we can try to take 10 minutes to see if we can make that work with a JS Fiddle. And then the second thing I was hoping to do, which we may not get to this hour, was I would like to take the code we've got and put it up on the internet and actually get the whole stack running in terms of being able to push a code object off onto a web server. So you're familiar with Amazon S3, Whitney?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Have you heard of something called CloudFront?
CloudFront? No, I haven't.
Yeah, let me see, make sure it's the right name so I don't send you on a wild goose chase. Yes.
CloudFront.
So CloudFront is basically, it's a CDN, content delivery network. And the idea is that basically all we have is a single web page. So that is like more like a web server rather than a file server, basically. So the idea is that it would, and the theory is that we can make this app simple enough that it's just a simple web page. We don't need an application server. We don't need a bunch of business logic. We just need to be able to serve a file from Amazon and just have it show up everywhere. So that's the thing we will try next if we get that far. All right, so let's go to our simplified SVG fiddle. So the problem is that the existing Reactive Coffee code expects a jQuery object. And the jQuery is used to dealing with HTML. It can't handle HTML. The question that I've been wondering about is right now right here in this JS fiddle, we create, let me hide your video there to avoid too much recursiveness. Oops. Is we can create this nice little SVG object here, and let's go ahead and double check our logic here, make sure this is the right thing. Alt.set. Okay, so we're creating that little rect element there. We're changing behavior. Now, if we do a console.log alt and run that, and we inspect the element, we see that we're getting that nice little SVG element being created. And let's just try another. Yes, it is an instance of SVG element. So the interesting question is, now we are appending that to SVG, the SVG object. And let's see if we can actually get that element from this console. We're working an iframe over here on the side, which makes it a little tricky, but it should be SVG equals. Okay, we're not getting the element back here. Let me try this. We are in CoffeeScript, right? So let's put a make rect method here where we create this and return it. And just modify it to make sure I'm not fooling myself. Yes, okay. So we can make a object here. In fact, let's make this color here so we can tell these things apart. Okay, save that. So the idea is this make rect then creates an SVG element which is appended to the SVG element there. The question is what comes out of that? In particular, can we, the theory is, or the hypothesis is, if we create an SVG element and append it to an HTML element that's managed by jQuery, will it give us a jQuery object back? So we have, what do we have? Do we have the body object anywhere?
Try document.body.
Oh, right, we don't have a body element there. That's why. Let's do it. Actually, what we want is a div class equals parent. And then what we want to do is grab that. That's dot parent. Let's just look at our how do we close the console? There we go. So we have an SVG for the circle, we have another SVG for the ellipse, and then we have the div there. If we grab it from here, do we have jQuery live enough to do? No. Okay, jQuery is not in the namespace for some reason, even though it is there. I wonder if this is because we're mucking around with the thing. Well, this is programmatically. Clearly, it exists here. Let's just try it this way. Sure we are. How are we doing our All right, it's there. That's 2 tags. Let's see if we get Rx even. We have RxT, right? This version of. Okay, there we go. All right. And then can you get an element back there? Equals on that. So we're getting something out. Yeah, so this is the, right, so that's the div that was there. Now what we want is to do something like here. Red rect equals make rect red. And then do E1 dot append red rect, which may not render. Since it's not inside an SVG tag. But it is there. And then the question is this E1 is a jQuery object. So we should be able to get its children. Which is a method. We want to actually give it the value of that. Direct. The question, so, okay, those are the children. The question is, what I want to know is the type of those children. Like, are those SVG elements, or are they jQuery objects? So, SVG element. Okay, looks like it's true. It really is a. Is kid 0 a? Where am I? Okay, kids 1 is not an instance of SVG element. Okay, so even when we append it into a jQuery object, what's an instance of anyway? The instance of jQuery. It used to be when we were getting objects out, we would get these jQuery collection objects, which would just show up as object. And of course, jQuery has a nice two strings, so we can't actually see what it actually is. Can you see the prototype? Undefined, yeah. So anyway, the naive attempt to just add a tag, SVG element tag, to a jQuery collection object and have it automatically converted does not appear to be working. So,
is there perhaps another way to convert it to a jQuery object?
Great question. Wrap. Woohoo.
Huh.
There is an object like that. It's not clear what it does with non-HTML DOM objects. Seems like it's worth a try, though. 2 equals so this is a method on the jQuery object. So it should wrap around the matching object. Oh, okay. So yeah, you have to already get the object back to call wrap on it. So you have to already have a jQuery collection object and then wrap something else around it.
Oh, okay.
Let's go into the article that had a this was the most comprehensive answer I could find to how to do this. And basically it says you can parse the XML and then use import node, something like this. So you parse the string as XML, string SVG with all common namespaces and extract the contents. And this guy has an inner SVG shim, which is a nice version of inner HTML. So what does it do? So it adds an inner HTML property on SVG element, creates a div element,
Okay.
clones the node, and it returns HTML. And it creates snippets inside the SVG document. This is the third option, is create a named SVG element with the attributes optional text. The document creates selected container. append wrap G-class icon. Otherwise, you do it manually. Here's another hack. It's terse. So this is actually somewhat interesting. Let's see what these look like. There are lots of CSS errors, but that doesn't bother us. So what it's doing is just creating these circles here. Creates a div, creates a fragment, but that is just appending the elements. Those don't look like they're ever becoming HTML arguments as far as I can tell. Receptacle, child nodes, 0 child nodes. Those are just the circle elements there. Yeah, so those are actual DOM elements which we're just appending in. That doesn't seem to be helping us with this that problem. Here, so they do it using XHTML. You familiar with XHTML, Whitney?
Not very, no.
So basically, you use HTML, right? HTML is it's a somewhat painful but fairly well understood set of tags. And many years ago, they invented this thing called XML, which was designed to be a nice way to modularize namespaces. And so they tried to redo HTML, something called XHTML, which was well-formed XML. You had to close all your tags. Everything was these nicely namespaced modules. And it was beautiful, it was elegant, and nobody used it. That's one of my great miscalls. I thought XHTML was the future because it seemed like it would work way better than the mess that is HTML. But in fact, it was soundly rejected and thrashed by the marketplace and basically resulted in 5 lost years of the web, with HTML5 being the rebirth of serious HTML thing. And I don't entirely understand why, and that bugs me because it feels like there's some important lesson about human nature and technology adoption that I have not fully internalized. But I think the simplest answer is that people are just used to HTML, and any additional cognitive burden of having to think differently about HTML was unpopular. And it was just perceived as additional pain for no good benefit. The other lesson, I think, is that XML tries to have the idea that if it's not valid, it should be ignored. If it's not valid, it's a bug. Whereas HTML has the philosophy, it's not valid, just ignore it, which makes it easy to add new elements to HTML, but painful to add new elements to XML. So this shim looks like it would work, but it requires moving to XHTML, which historically has been a bad idea. So it's not, it's just one web page, and maybe we could get away with it, but it is a awkward thing. So let's look at this guy's shim here.
Okay.
It says create a named SVG element on a node. And then it appends to the standard DOM methods. So create with entries and optional text. So what he's doing here, it says the append to method basically takes the an HTML container, in this case a div of some kind or equivalent, and then give it a name, attributes, and text. And the name is the interesting part here. So this defines a bunch of JavaScript variables. Initial terms, and if there is not anything in that namespace, create the parent node. And then where does that word name show up again? Create element here. So we create all the namespaces here, just so we have it. And then once we've done that, we create our element here. We set the attributes using the standard DOM calls for those elements, and then we still append the child. So this looks like the same thing that we tried. Is you can create an SVG element and you can add it to a jQuery node that it created, but it's still just going to be an SVG element. It's not going to have all the fancy attributes and everything else that we were hoping for that allows us to just treat it as a jQuery collection object. To do that, we would actually have to use inner HTML on element. Oh, that's interesting. You do have inner HTML on DOM. After ASB and an HTML, it asks for inner HTML. Let's just try this and see. This doesn't look like what we want. Where's our fiddle? Let's call this SVG wrapper. And this should be creating a green rectangle. Nicely there. And we want to look at the SVG wrapper element. So 2 equals, that's an ID. Wrap 2.children. That's the SVG element. Oh yeah, the collection object here grabs all the SVG objects, which makes it a little weird. So we run that where we only draw that once. And then we have an SVG object which is created there, and then what we want is object 0. And that's the children of that. Okay. No, no. Let's see, SVG equals that 2 to 0. And let's see, SVG element. see anything. That's weird. Okay, it is true. Okay, it's true. Let's just check and see. Yeah, the doesn't seem to get the outer function. Let's try one more time to see if the children have any. Do you have a children object? No. We have a child node there, but don't have. Yeah, it doesn't have all the jQuery stuff defined on it. Okay.
Okay.
So we've convinced ourselves that there's no straightforward, easy way. There is an extension to jQuery for SVG. This is a horribly confusing website. jQuery SVG, jQuery SVG canvas. Which is interesting. Test SVG canvas with div with the following. So to retrieve the SVG instance, start working on it. So, now this is a alternative to kind of what we were trying to do of creating these tags for reactive coffee.
Right.
Is alternatives. Node. It's not clear this actually even does what we were hoping to do, which is add all the jQuery behaviors to SVG. It just basically gives a so it might be worth looking at in the future, but first blush doesn't seem like it'll solve our immediate problem of letting us reuse the reactive coffee infrastructure with SVG elements. So rather than pouring more time down that sinkhole, let's go back to our code. So this is Rohan's Teenage Robot Turtles. We have an indexed HTML. So the dream, you have to leave it 2, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So right now, so the goal would be to actually package this up as something we could share off of the internet. And there's 2 ways to do that. Well, right now we are linking to a local file in our HTML where we're describing the current version, which is fine, except that it's another file we have to upload and maintain. A cleverer or a simpler way to do that would be to require that from our main.js file or main.coffee file. And then we could just browserify or watcherify will automatically bundle it up for us. So to do that, we would have to do something like this. Where we treat it as a local module to import rather than an external dependency. Yes, yes. And essentially that's doing a server-side require rather than a client-side script. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay.
So let's see what our friend Browserify did with all that. It's writing a much larger file to main.js, and it is less than happy. Let's see if you can tell us where it's happy. And defines a non-object. Do we have Rx defined? No. Fortunately, I'm getting error messages from Watchify. Let's see what this says. We want our Browserify. Cannot find module main.coffee. Okay, that was weird. Oh, because we're in reactive coffee mode rather than in the power of node. That was fun. What is that?
Whoa.
Now that should be all of reactive coffee, which would be good. We remove the from the client, add it to the thing, and then we have our edit module. We have our require, which gets the the challenge might be that the reactive coffee is not exporting things the way we would expect them to. So let's look and see if we can figure out what it is expecting it to do. So if we go over to that, we want reactive coffee again. We're just grabbing this file here, or even just the coffee file here. So this thing here returns Rx. Let's just try it a simple way and see if we just, rather than doing a destructured, you familiar with the destructured assignments?
No. Could you go through that?
Sure.
Please?
So normally when you run a require, you get back a dictionary or some object or things like that. But often what you will get back is really a dictionary containing a list of keys and values. And
Okay.
CoffeeScript has this wonderful little idiom where I could say, give me set items in the current scope to the thing with the key named items in the require object.
Oh,
So basically,
okay.
it unpacks the dictionary and inserts the keys you name into the local scope. Because otherwise you end up with a lot of things that look like, like that. Because I get a dictionary back, I just want the RX key, and I want to set it to RX. You see that a lot in Ruby. You can do from, well, they use require as an actual expression rather than a statement. But if you have multiple items, you want to be able to unpack them. Anyway, so that's what it's doing there. But if you're not getting back a dictionary, if you're getting back the actual object you care about, then you don't need any of that. So let's try. Let's just try and see if that makes any difference. So main.js is there. And require seems to be working. Let's check our resources. Yes, that main.js there. .js. There's our code there. I did just this just to see for giggles. Where are we? We're only one step down from this folder, but we are 2 steps from there, so that should be a double dot coffee. Reactive. Since with our browser file stitch, we don't need to specify that. Let's add -v flag to see if we'll give us better error messages. Source main.coffee. So too many source. All right. Supposed to give that error. Then it wrote this. And then let's if we do that, what happens? I wonder. Do that from the browser. It's going to require, right, because it's all manually inserted there. Where we are seeing it is console. Resources, main.js, which is what? React coffee, source reactive. And it seems like that is finding it and including it in there. but not setting the variable to anything interesting, or at least not enough that we can see it. Let's pop this out. Where's the pop out button? Okay. So editor.coffee, main.coffee. Modules. Huh. We seem to have a real clear linkage to requiring the editor and main files. We don't seem to have the same creation by here. Oh, okay, this is main.coffee here. And it requires reactive, source reactive. Which when we change it, we do get the nice Watchify output. So Watchify seems to compile it just fine. And then our RxTs. And the question is, when you run reactive.coffee, what exactly do you get? There's RS factory. That's the top level wrapper, which creates all this here. And the very last line of Rx factory is it returns Rx. And then when it's called, it does all these various hoop jumpings, and it module exports Rx. Let's see if we can run this down a tiny bit before you have to run off.
Okay.
So in our main.coffee, we get this here. Let's just do a console.log Rx. Okay, it rewrites it, and then when we reload our page here, we get a console, which is, this is an Rx object there, which is encouraging. And then what if we make that .rxt and .xt.tags, and then what? It runs. So we're getting that error. So Rx is being created, but not Rxt. And so there's an object being created there. And the question, what is that object? Okay, there's the object.
Oh, wow.
This looks like a RxT is undefined. Okay, well, it's creating something, which is good. It's just I don't know what. So I'm going to try and destructure that and see if I can figure out how to do it. And I will let you go.
Okay. Are you having another session later this evening or late
We're doing
afternoon?
the team's conference call at 5 o'clock Pacific time.
Okay, great.
So I'll talk to you then.
Great. Sounds good.
Great, thank you.
All right.
Great, thank you, Miss Whitney. Thank you all for listening. And I forgot to screen capture this. So no, I didn't. There it is.